Pawn Stars, the famous gold and silver pawn shop chain, is in trouble right now. Lawsuits, internal accusations, and money problems have brought the chain to the edge of bankruptcy. But what really stands out is the huge collection of items that used to be on display but have been quietly left behind. Now investigators are asking the big question, why weren't those valuable items taken away? Is there a secret behind them that could change the whole story? Pawn Stars, as everyone knows, it is in the middle of an unprecedented crisis. Rick Big Hose Harrison's son Corey Harrison is serving a life sentence and is stuck in a nightmare while in prison. Meanwhile, family feuds that have been building for years are finally coming to a head and threaten to destroy everything the Harrison family has worked so hard to build over generations. It all began with a normal financial audit that was done when there were signs of problems with the store's cash flow. But when auditors looked into the records of Gold and Silver Pawn, the famous store from Pawn Stars, they found a lot of collectibles that didn't seem to have come from legitimate sources. This raised serious questions about how honest the Harrison family's business is. Gold and Silver Pawn used to be a famous place in Las Vegas where millions of tourists went every year to see Rick Harrison, his son Corey, and his happy assistant Austin Chumley Russell. But now that TV fame is being overshadowed by a widening scandal, many of the thousands of items in the store are thought to not have the right paperwork and may have even been bought without going through the right legal channels. This is a very sad event for the Harrison family because Adam Harrison, Rick's private son, died of a drug overdose in January 2025. The loss has shocked the Las Vegas community, which has strong ties to the Harrison family. Rick was devastated. A person familiar with the situation said that losing his son was the first time he had ever felt like he had failed at life. As investigators continued to look through the store's huge inventory, which had grown to accommodate the show's many fans, they started to notice a pattern with a number of historical artifacts and antiques. Some had unclear paperwork, while others matched theft reports from other states. For example, there were Civil War artifacts with unclear paperwork, and investigators thought that some of the items may have been taken from protected areas. Natalie Rodriguez, a former FBI art crime expert, said, "We're talking about thousands of artifacts that have been collected over decades. Many of them date back to before the show when there wasn't as much proof and documentation of provenance. It's hard to tell what's real and what's not." Notably, investigators also found several Native American artifacts that are strictly protected by the Native American NAGPRA, stands for the American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act. The investigation became even more serious when it became clear where these artifacts came from legally. Music: the investigation is still going on, and all eyes are on Austin Chumley Russell, a popular character on the hit TV show Pawn Stars. In 2016, Russell got into a lot of legal trouble when police searched his home after an initial report of sexual assault, even though he wasn't charged. The search turned up illegal drugs and unregistered weapons. The case ended with Russell being sentenced to probation. Russell admitted to having weapons and drugs and was given 3 years of probation as a punishment. Since then, he has worked to rebuild his life and reputation. His lawyer, Martin Cohen, says Russell had nothing to do with the controversial purchases that are being investigated. Most of the items in question were bought before Russell had any authority in the store. As an employee who did not buy anything, Chumley is said to have fully cooperated with authorities in the ongoing investigation. Rick Harrison, who is being investigated, is facing the biggest problem of his career and life. He has said many times on the show that his father, Richard "Old Man" Harrison, taught him everything he knows about the business. Rick has always stressed that knowledge and care are the two most important things in the antiques business. When Old Man died in 2018 after a long battle with Parkinson's disease, Rick took over all of his family's responsibilities. A former producer who worked with the show for 7 seasons, people who knew the Old Man said he was always strict but fair. It would hurt him to see the legacy he built being questioned like today, the person said. In fact, the things he once proudly gave to future generations are now being looked at by authorities, from questionable historical artifacts to things that allegedly break preservation laws. The investigation has also reached the financial world, where a team of forensic accountants is looking at the web of businesses Harrison's built on the success of Pawn Stars. Authorities are looking into signs of strange spending and unclear cash flow in a number of Las Vegas businesses, including Rick's Rollin' Smoke BBQ, the Viper Room bar that Corey ran, and a number of companies that ran other businesses. Corey Big Hoss Harrison, who was trained to run the store as a teenager, now finds his future in danger. The episodes that used to show his journey from a rebellious teen to an adult man are now overshadowed by the investigation, a close friend said. Corey has tried to stay positive and support his father, but he still hasn't recovered from the shock of losing his older brother Adam Harrison earlier this year. Adam was a private son who avoided the spotlight and TV. He died of an overdose at the age of 39 after a long battle with addiction. Adam was always a big part of the family's life, and his death not only devastated Rick but also brought attention to the opioid crisis that kills thousands of people every year. Rick Harrison said, "You will always be in my heart. I love you, Adam." He also used his voice and fame to bring attention to the dangers of the opioid epidemic, which has quietly torn apart many families, including his own. As the investigation continues, what was once an American TV cultural icon, with millions of viewers and crowds flocking to Las Vegas every day, is now facing a problem that has never been seen before. The store is still open, but the mood has turned heavy. "My dad loved leaving his legacy to his grandchildren, but it could be destroyed by something he thought was a source of pride for decades." People close to Rick Harrison say he is fully cooperating with investigators and insists that any mistakes were not made on purpose and were probably caused by the fast growth of the business during the popularity of Pawn Stars. Ellis Monroe, a business consultant, says that turning a local pawn shop into a global brand almost overnight has caused serious operational problems. When a family business grows so quickly, its filing systems, financial controls, and purchasing management systems often fail to keep up. This can lead to mistakes, especially when the workload is out of hand at the start. In a short statement, the show's regulars confirmed the investigation and made it clear that the network production was not involved in the day-to-day operations of Gold and Silver Pawn. Notably, the show has been put on hold until these issues are resolved. Pawn Stars used to be one of the most popular cable TV shows, with over 600 episodes spread across 22 seasons. Fans all over the world were fascinated by Rick, Chumlee, and Corey as they analyzed strange artifacts, argued with sellers, and got into funny arguments with other cast members. A big part of the show's appeal came from its educational aspect, with Rick Harrison sharing his knowledge of history, culture, and authentication methods with viewers. However, this knowledge has now raised questions about Miranda Jensen, a TV critic, said that Rick has been portrayed as an expert who can spot fakes right away. If the accusations are true, it makes him look very shady. One of the most disturbing discoveries was the presence of antiquities thought to have come from places with strict laws against exporting heritage items, like Egypt, Greece, and some Middle Eastern countries. When a well-known business deals with historical objects on a regular basis, Dr. Kastner, an archaeologist who specializes in repatriating artifacts, says that it is especially important to be careful because items of unknown provenance could have been stolen or smuggled, which is a very serious crime. The investigation also led to a review of previous episodes in which experts were asked to confirm the authenticity of artifacts. Were there any items that left the shop without being checked out when the cameras were off? I've watched every episode and I've always been impressed by the level of Margaret Winters, a history teacher from Minnesota who made the trip to Las Vegas to see the famous pawn shop, said, "They take great care to make sure things are real." Rick said he wouldn't buy anything without proper paperwork, which is hard to square with what's being shown. The investigation goes beyond the artifacts and shows the store's alarmingly bad financial situation. The store still gets tourists, but financial records show that cash flow started to suffer in 2022. Smart people use when output slowed down and sales dropped from their high point. It was the heyday to diversify and invest, said financial expert Thomas Keegan. But now that the trend isn't as strong, it's hard to keep making money from side projects. Making things even more difficult are the legal problems and family disputes over Richard "Old Man" Harrison's estate. Harrison was one of the co-founders of the pawn shop and died in 2018. His will showed that one of his 3 sons was left out of the inheritance, leaving only Rick and Joseph. Even though the investigation is complicated by the pawn shop's ownership, Many people remember that Rick Harrison has been in trouble with the law before and was able to clear his name. Now the question is whether he can do it again, this time amidst the chaos in his business and the loss of a beloved TV show. After his legal troubles in 2016, Russell made big changes in his life. He lost a lot of weight, focused on his health, and started over by opening a candy store near the people who knew him before he was on the show, saw how hard he worked at recovery, which he proudly shared. Austin is also a case study in determination. After his mistakes, he dedicated himself to building a new life for himself, one that wasn't tied to the pawn shop. A longtime friend confirmed that he is now sober, living a healthy life, and pursuing legal business ventures. However, because he was on the show before, he was still involved in the investigation, even though he hadn't done anything wrong. The store's financial decisions or sales. The investigation also started to reveal some little-known facts about reality TV shows. For example, while Pawn Stars was supposed to show the day-to-day operations of a real pawn shop, a lot of the scenes and situations were staged before they aired. This created two worlds, one for the cameras and one for the regular customers. According to TV producer Samantha Lewis, this is how many other shows work. You can't expect valuable items and interesting situations. The scenes are planned to keep things interesting, and the business has to be honest both on TV and in real life, which is hard to do when cameras are always there. At the same time, investigators are going through a huge inventory that is thought to be spread out in several storage facilities outside the main store. The Gold and Silver Pawn Shop is still open, but it's more of a tourist attraction than a traditional pawn shop. A steady flow of people comes in. Steady, and many people don't know about the investigation going on behind the scenes. Thomas Mercer, an Australian tourist visiting with his family, said, "My kids are big fans of the show. We were hoping to see Rick or Chumley today, but no one was there." For them, it's still an iconic place to visit, even as more and more of the truth comes out. For Rick Harrison, things are now a whirlwind of personal and professional crisis. After the sudden death of his son Adam, he was about to fall apart. An emotional friend remembered Adam. Rick took him to rehab many times, but it was too painful. Not only is Rick facing a huge loss, but he is also leading the family business through a legal storm. Rick is a survivor, says a longtime partner. He built an empire from nothing. No matter where this investigation goes, I don't think he's going to give up. The legal proceedings are expected to last for months. Authorities will have to figure out what items must be returned and whether the business has any obligations. Harrison's legacy, which was once a symbol of the American dream of working hard and getting ahead, is now in danger. An emotional former employee who worked at the store for more than 10 years said, "Old Harrison built this place with his own hands, hoping to leave it to future generations. Rick took it to heights his father never dreamed of, and now instead of passing it on, they're watching it fall apart." Tourists keep coming to the store to take pictures with the Pawn Stars logo and buy souvenirs, but few of them know that they may be seeing the end of a hugely popular American TV show. The show was once very popular, but it's now in danger of becoming too famous to remember music. Frank Fritz's peaceful mansion, which is full of history and natural beauty, is now the focus of an investigation that has even experienced FBI agents stumped. When agents were sent to the huge Iowa estate in early March 2025, they had no idea what was going on. Fritz, a former star of American Pickers, bought the farmhouse in rural Davenport in 2013 to create a private and quiet space away from the noise and chaos of the city. The 20-acre property next to the Mississippi River Valley drew him in with its natural beauty and historical value. After years of renovations, the house was turned into a home that blends classic and modern architecture, reflecting Fritz's love for both. Fritz's peaceful life slowly became more private after he left the show American Pickers in 2020. After having a stroke in 2022, he became even more hidden from the public, living alone at his estate. Vintage motorcycles and other memorabilia kept coming to the estate, but most of Fritz's friends and neighbors rarely saw him.
In early 2025, Fritz's close friend James Kenworth became worried when he couldn't reach him. When Kenworth didn't hear back, he asked local authorities to check on Fritz's welfare. On March 5, 2025, Scott County Police went to his house and found a strange scene. The house was intact and showed no signs of disturbance, but Fritz had suddenly disappeared. There was no sign of him in the house, but all of his personal belongings, including his wallet and keys, were left behind. Thinking that something was wrong, local authorities called the FBI for help. Federal agents did a full search but found no trace. FBI forensic experts found a strange pattern in the library's new wood flooring. Thermal imaging showed a change in temperature under a section of the newly installed flooring, which suggested there was a void underneath. On March 9, 2025, FBI technicians started removing the wood planks in the library in hopes of finding a hidden room or secret storage area. What they found, however, shocked them. Not a treasure or valuable document as they thought, but a dark secret. It was a discovery that shocked everyone. Under the floorboards of the beautiful Iowa mansion where Frank Fritz used to live, FBI agents found a shocking long-kept secret. In a hidden room about 15 square feet in size, that could only be reached by a secret ladder, everything had been carefully put together to keep it from being found by anyone. Investigators were shocked by what they found in the room. Instead of the valuables and antiques that one might expect from Fritz's collection, they found a lot more than they had expected. They found thousands of documents and dozens of neatly organized leather-bound diaries with carefully dated notes. Some of the documents were decades old. One wall was covered with photos and newspaper clippings that were all linked together by red string to make a web that seemed to be related to an investigation Fritz had been secretly working on for a long time. FBI Special Agent Meredith Carver immediately ordered the crime scene to be cleaned up. A security fence was put up around the property, and the documents were sealed. Document researchers and behavioral experts from FBI headquarters. They rushed to the scene of the crime to help, but what they found shocked them. Fritz had kept detailed records of a string of unsolved crimes in the Midwest that he thought were connected. Fritz's childhood diaries showed that the disappearance of a childhood friend sparked his own investigation. Over the years, he used his antiques hunting trips to visit crime scenes and talk to witnesses while pretending to be a collector. The detailed notes in his diaries, which included his own observations and theories, were Fritz's recent journal entries, are scary because they show that he is starting to see links between a number of unsolved crimes. He thinks that these crimes may be connected to a group of antique dealers and collectors using their businesses to hide illegal activities. He has gathered documents, such as police reports, witness statements, and evidence that has never been seen before, that raise troubling questions about Fritz's connections to a number of important people in the antiques world. The FBI immediately expanded its investigation. Supporting information from the documents Fritz had gathered, they found at least 17 unsolved murders and disappearances that happened in Illinois, Iowa, Missouri, and Wisconsin from 1978 to 2010. Fritz has written down the details of these cases, pointing out similarities that previous official investigations had never seen. The discovery caused a stir, and a huge investigation was launched to look again at the cases that Fritz had linked. Crime units in 4 states started working together with the FBI, which broadened the scope of the investigation. Agent Carver put together a task force to check Fritz's theories and keep looking for the missing collector. On March 15, 2025, the investigation took a dramatic new turn when the J in Fritz's final journal was identified as Joanna Wills, a former district attorney who had worked on several cold cases in the 1990s before going to prison. When agents found Wills's law office in Chicago, she confirmed that Fritz had contacted her in early 2025. Fritz had planned to meet Wills on February 13 to hand over important evidence, but he never showed up. Wills said she tried to call him several times but got no response, and because Fritz had a history of health problems, she thought he might have been hospitalized. The FBI's fears grew when they realized Fritz might have disappeared just as he was about to share important findings. It looks like someone knew about his plans and tried to stop him. The search for Fritz was no longer just a missing person case, it could also be a murder case. Things started to change on March 22, 2025, almost 3 weeks after Fritz went missing. Agents used location data from Fritz's cell phone to find his SUV hidden in a remote wooded area near the Mississippi River, only 30 meters from his home. The car was carefully covered with branches and had a suitcase with extra magazines and a laptop inside, but there were no signs that Fritz had been attacked. Fritz quickly found on his laptop that he had encrypted files with copies of all his research and video recordings of his findings. In the video, Fritz seems tense and careful as he says, "If you're watching this, something's probably not right. I've been following these people for 30 years, connecting the dots that no one else sees." Fritz then says, "I'm going to meet Joanna tomorrow to turn. I've tried everything, but I don't think I can make it. They're on I made copies of the research and hid it somewhere. No one will find it." He also gives the coordinates of a place where he hid a second piece of evidence. When the police arrive, they find an abandoned farm silo full of papers and things that Fritz says were stolen from his victims. These things have never been mentioned in police reports and show how thorough Fritz's research was. The FBI investigation quickly moves into a new phase on April 5, 2025, when raids were carried out at 16 locations across the Midwest, going after antique stores, homes, and businesses connected to the suspects Fritz had identified. Agents found dozens of items that matched the descriptions of stolen property from unsolved crimes. More disturbingly, some of the places they searched revealed hidden rooms like the one under Fritz's library, where the thieves hid stolen goods and planned their operations. As a result of these raids, the FBI arrested 12 suspects, including 3 well-known figures in the antiques world. 2 of the suspects were former police officers who had been involved in some of the early investigations. They said that their connections had kept the group ahead of the police for years, even drawing attention away from the group when investigators started to close in. An FBI analysis shows that the network has been running for 40 years, using legal antique shops as a front for theft and selling stolen goods through legal channels. This allowed the suspects to live a comfortable life while the cases slowly went away. Dismantled, there isn't enough proof to show that all the criminals have been caught yet. It's still early, and the FBI investigation is still going on, with unpredictable outcomes. In April 2025, a major breakthrough in the case of Frank Fritz's disappearance occurred, revealing that he was not only missing, but also under serious threat from an organized crime network. A motorcycle mechanic in northern Minnesota called the FBI after recognizing a man going by a fake name. The man who brought in Fritz's description brought in a vintage Harley-Davidson for repairs and asked that it not be photographed. He also said that he would live in a remote cabin, which made investigators even more suspicious. After searching the area for 3 days, the FBI found a cabin in the middle of nowhere with a matching motorcycle covered with a tarp. When they went inside, they saw Frank Fritz, who had changed his appearance by growing a beard and wearing glasses. Dyed hair was still the guy they were looking for. Fritz, on the other hand, didn't give up right away. His first words were, "Did you find what I left on the floor?" Fritz agreed to go with the FBI only after being told that his research had been found. At a press conference, Fritz explained that his investigation began in the 1970s, when a childhood friend went missing. During his time on American Pickers, Fritz used the time to gather information, visit crime scenes, and put together the pieces that led to the arrest. "I never meant to be an amateur sleuth," Fritz said, "but once I saw the patterns that I couldn't help but see, I knew that these weren't random crimes. They were planned and interconnected, all involving the antiques trade." Fritz found a link between the unsolved cases and the stolen antiques, especially after seeing items at auctions that matched the descriptions of stolen property. At first, Fritz was just a collector, but he noticed some strange changes. In the old things that made him think they had been changed he kept tracking the items, even though he knew they were being traded legally. Fritz recalled a key event. Last year at an auction in Chicago, I recognized a unique Art Deco clock that I knew had been stolen from a house in Wisconsin. The owner of the house had been murdered in 1996. When Fritz asked about the clock, the seller seemed worried. Days later, Fritz realized he was being watched. Strange cars parked nearby. Fritz thought he was being followed and was in danger, so he made a backup plan. To protect his research, he built a secret room under the floor of the library and called former prosecutor Joanna Wilkes. But when he saw someone trying to hack into his security system, he decided to act like he was home, but he actually escaped through a secret tunnel, hidden evidence in different places, and left with cash and supplies. Fritz's story is not just an urban legend. Fritz's investigations into unsolved crimes took him on an exciting journey through a dangerous and complex criminal network. What he found was one of the biggest breakthroughs in the history of criminal investigations in the Midwest. In June 2025, the FBI officially charged 23 people with being part of a huge criminal network that committed crimes like murder, burglary, breaking and entering, and obstructing justice. Prosecutors said the group was responsible for at least 11 murders and dozens of grand thefts over 4 decades. A secret room under Frank Fritz's library held the carefully collected photos, documents, and research that Fritz had gathered over the years. The room became a symbol of one man's unwavering determination to find cases that the authorities had missed. FBI analysts said that Fritz's research went beyond the official police investigation and made connections that would not have been possible without his extensive knowledge of antiques. After being questioned and testifying in front of grand juries in several states, Fritz was put under temporary witness protection until all members of the criminal network were caught. His health has been unstable since his stroke, but with the right medical care he has recovered and is glad that his long search for justice is finally over. When asked why he went so far despite the risk and cost, Fritz's answer is simple but powerful. When I've collected things over the years, I've always believed that I know that when things go missing, people do too. Someone has to speak up for them. Someone has to remember Fritz's case, which was called the Picker Pursuit by the FBI. It was famous not only for the crime that was solved but also for the unique detective who came forward, a man whose keen eye and love of antiques brought down a criminal organization that had eluded generations of professional investigators.